I'm Julie Womack. I'm the head of organizing at Red Wine and Blue, and I am here with our Chief People Officer. You want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm LaFonda Cousin. I'm the Chief People Officer here at Red Wine and Blue, and I am really excited for this conversation tonight.
We roped LaFonda into this because she's a Texas resident, y'all. So this is very important to her. So
I'm here.
for those of you who have never actually been to an event with us before, or maybe this is your first time finding Red Wine and Blue, we are so excited to have you here. We are a national organization, and we have 650,000 women across the country who are part of our network, and 830 plus affiliated local groups who are doing the really hard work on the ground of organizing and turning people out for elections and fighting back about stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight. So we really want to be working with all of you to fight extremism in your community. And it doesn't get much more extreme than what's going on in your state right now, LaFonda.
So you might know, some of you know, many of you know, Texas is currently the focus of a really heated national political battle of congressional redistricting. Essentially, Donald Trump called his good friend, Greg Abbott, and asked him to find a few congressional seats, and the Texas Republicans responded with an attempt to redraw the Texas maps to solidify their hold on power here in Texas. So, our Texas Democrats, including Representative Ann Johnson, who we'll be talking to later tonight, have been fighting back to prevent what is an unfair and frankly discriminatory redistricting that could render the votes of many Black, Brown, and progressive voters across the state obsolete. Obsolete. Unfair redistricting just undermines democracy, y'all. Period. That's the long and the short of it. It's not just about lines on a map, it's about power. Power that impacts healthcare, education, hospitals, infrastructure, funding for schools, disaster relief, so on, so on, so on. All of the things that we know you care about here at Red, Wine, and Blue. And it ultimately kills public trust by drowning out the votes of the people. And it isn't just about Texas. I see so many of you here in the chat that aren't from Texas. This matters in all states. What's happening here is a warning sign, and it's a blueprint for voter suppression nationwide. Texas can be used as a political pilot of sorts. So if it flies here, other states can take note and it can be replicated in other places like Georgia and Florida and North Carolina and beyond. So it's important that we're talking about what is happening in Texas and that you're talking about it with your friends and with your family. Um, so it makes it harder for the powers that be to essentially get away with it. So it doesn't just happen. Talking about it creates awareness, and awareness means pushback. And when we push back, we can make things happen for good.
Absolutely. So I love the pushback, and that's what's so important. I know that many people, I was just in a huddle in Ohio with a bunch of people who are really engaged. And one of the things they kept saying was just like so many people are just disenchanted with voting, but it's a core part of our democracy. We need to stand up for it. And the most important thing, no matter what happens in Texas, and we all have expectations of what's going to happen, no matter how hard of a fight Representative Johnson and her colleagues put up. But we also know that if we're not talking to our friends and raising awareness of what's going on, that then we're going to lose that battle. We need to raise awareness. We just had Erica Chenoweth on, who maybe about a month ago, who has the 3.5% rule. In order to stop authoritarianism, they cannot survive when 3.5% of the population is engaged. That's why raising your voice is so important. So we're going to keep talking about that. And one of the ways you can stay engaged and know what is going on is with a brand new feature that Red Wine and Blue launched. I'm going to let LaFonda talk about that, and then we're bringing up Representative Johnson.
Yeah. So one of the ways that you can make a little noise with Red Wine and Blue is by downloading our brand new Red Wine and Blue app. And you can find that app on the App Store. We'll talk about more ways you can get involved and make noise at the end of this event. But if you've got your phone out, go ahead and pick it up and download that app. But first, we want to talk to someone who we're very excited to have a conversation with tonight, who is making some noise right here in Texas. We are going to talk to Ann Johnson.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Welcome, man. We're so
Honored to be
glad to
on.
have you here.
So
Um,
grateful to be with you all. Thank you.
Yes. So you are a Houston native and a former chief human trafficking prosecutor, and you've been in the House of Representatives for House District 134. You were elected in 2020 and been reelected twice since then. So we also know that you've been really busy lately. So we're going to jump right into it. But I just want everybody in the chat to say
Mm.
thank you because we planned this event a few weeks ago and we had no idea that it would be the Monday that she's returning to Texas after 2 weeks away. So thank you for all you've done, but then also just for showing up to talk to us tonight because I know you're probably exhausted, but
No, so happy to be with you, and have an event like this and seeing so many folks that are on this webinar to talk about this critical issue. The fact that you are paying attention to what is happening in Texas. Yes, we are exhausted, but it's a small price to pay for what we're trying to do to raise awareness and be prepared to defend democracy throughout this nation. And so I am a proud Texas House Democrat. You're right. I'm in my third term. This is now my second quorum break, both of which are around voting rights and ensuring that minority communities have an opportunity to be heard and represented. And I'm grateful to be on with you guys tonight. So thank you.
Well, we are grateful for the work that you and your colleagues are doing and the fight that you are fighting. Can you just start by just giving us a little bit of your history? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming a state rep
Yeah.
in Texas.
I'm a native Houstonian. I grew up in Texas. My dad was actually in the legislature back in the 60s. My mom was a Democratic judge, and she was actually the only Democrat to win in Harris County in 1994. And so I grew up around politics. And in 2012, there was a swing district that was up for election. And I actually decided to run as an open out candidate. And at the time, we didn't have anybody gay who was open and out actually elected to the Texas legislature. And we started running a really hard race. Lo and behold, midway through that race, even though our district didn't have anything to do with the existing court challenge around redistricting, they redrew that district and pushed it from a 51% Republican lean to a 57% Republican lean. And they plucked out the historic gay community in Houston called Montrose. And at the time when they did that, people asked me, they said, well, Ann, what are you going to do? Because they basically changed this district on you midway through the race. And I said, I promised people I was going to run hard, and I'm going to run really hard. And so I ran hard on issues that I cared about, like our LGBTQ community. I ran hard on being pro-choice and advocating for women's rights, and I ran hard on public education. And we took a lot more votes than we should have, but we lost. But it felt like a win because after that, my Republican opponent went from being pro-life to pro-choice and started advocating for the LGBTQ community. And then I came back in 2020. And at the time, it was really important that we try to take the Texas House. Again, I ran a really hard race, and I am proud that we won. And I have since been elected. But it kind of shows the power of redistricting. Because if you do that mid-decade, if you just decide that you want to redraw a district to determine who's going to win before anybody casts a vote, it is absolutely wrong. And so it is why I'm proud that I've been one of the Democrats today to step up and highlight what was happening in Texas, because I think probably before we broke quorum, I don't think anybody knew that Trump had called Abbott and said, hey, buddy, I need you to get me 5 new seats. And this was about to happen in the shadow of the night. And so I'm really proud of what Texas Democrats have done, the progress that we have made, and then the reality of the next stage of the next fight, which is back on the floor.
we're going to jump into a little bit deeper conversation about that phone call from Trump and the reaction down there. But I'm just curious, what is it like being a state rep or in the legislature in Texas? And what's the experience been like for you?
We are a part-time legislature. We make $7,200 a year. There are 150 of us, and we have veterinarians and lawyers and doctors and real estate agents. We have a very few young professionals because it's really hard to do this job. I am lucky that I'm a lawyer, which gives me a little bit of flexibility to be able to be here in Austin, but we are intended to be part-time. We are intended to be here from January and through May, 140 days, every odd numbered year. And we're intended to come debate big picture policy issues, get the budget done. We can't carry a debt, so we always have to do that. And we are seeing that Texas is just turning more and more extremist and partisan. And so now this is my third session. And I was an impeachment manager last time against Attorney General Paxton. This is our second quorum break, and we have had 4 to 5 special sessions in the past. The problem is that Republicans are now using the legislature in Texas and the idea of what we would call a special session. And let me tell you, a special session is the governor calls us all to come back. We're constitutionally not required to be here, but we heed the governor's call. And it's supposed to be for special events. When Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston and caused millions of dollars of damage and people lost their lives, he didn't call a special session. When COVID hit and there was a public health crisis and thousands of people were dying, he didn't call a special session. When we have had many mass shootings in Texas where children have been slaughtered, he hasn't called a special session. And so the fact that he has called a special session to get Trump 5 seats, and he has put 18 other items on the call, which I would call partisan gifts, has shown you just how far we have gone in Texas to political extremism and very far from what general voters want us to do.
Can you tell us when you first learned that Trump was asking Texas to add 5 new congressional seats, and what went through your head when that moment happened?
So we had heard the rumors for months, and we had
Mhm.
heard people saying about redistricting, and we're like, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And we kept having people say, are you sure this is not going to happen? And then again, we heard rumors right after our existing session. And you may remember there was a big veto of the weed bill. There was a bill brought up on THC in Texas. There was a ban on THC. The governor vetoed it and may have used that and vetoing our omnibus course
Mhm.
bill. He vetoed a human trafficking bill almost as a ruse to bring us back for special session. I kept hearing the rumors about the redistricting. And then a terrible thing happened in Texas. We had an unbelievable flood. July 4th, we lost more than 130, at least 137 people in Texas. It was outrageous. It was awful. And we also, around the same time, Trump went on video and to the press said, it's very simple. You do a little draw and you can get 5 more seats out of Texas to start there and then go get many more other places. And the next thing you know, we get a special session call. And of course, I want to address the victims and the flood that has happened in Central Texas. But we
Yeah.
now know that that was really just kind of a ruse because the whole reason they wanted us here in July was to do redistricting. And so for 2 weeks, even though I sit on the flood committee and we had talked to folks about the flooding, there was one bill that they brought up, and that was congressional redistricting. There was one bill of which they continued to seek my arrest, and that is congressional redistricting. And so I am grateful that I've had a chance to talk to some of the families that were victims of the flood and lost children. And even they recognized that they were being used as political cover to try to get 5 congressional seats. And so I am grateful that that has been exposed. I am grateful that now the entire nation sees the lack of character of Governor Greg Abbott and the Republicans that continue to push it. And here we are back in Austin, and they continue. In fact, they voted it out tonight. And they're going to bring redistricting and congressional redistricting in the attempt to steal 5 seats and determine the outcome of the election before anybody votes in Texas
Mhm.
because they are afraid of voters. Um, and then we move to the next phase, which is you've got to get this into the courts, and you've got to get the courts to recognize the racial discrimination and the violation of the Voting Rights Act, and the fact that that's a very real and tangible outcome that has to get moving.
I have a side question because I did hear about the fact that this was all, I mean, I heard this, I'm in Ohio, and I heard about the fact that this was a special session to deal with the flooding, and then nothing ever was, brought up about
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
How have your constituents or people you've talked to, I mean, how do they feel about that? Because to me, that just seems, I don't, like a really, really bad political move on their part, but I'm just curious what the reaction has been to that and what you think about that approach that they took.
Republicans have been in charge of Texas for more than 30 years. And I will
Mhm.
say Democrats have successfully pushed back. Um, and people are noticing, right? They were trying to pass this without much opposition. And it's hard. It is really hard to do a quorum break. It is an exceptional and extraordinary act. It is not an easy thing. You have to take more than 50 Democrats out of the House, and you have to leave the state. But we recognize that we were leaving to run to the front lines of the nation to highlight what was happening in Texas. And over the 2 weeks that this has happened, over the 2 weeks that people have paid attention to the story, that 50 House Democrats joined together to leave the state and what is happening, people are now recognizing, look, everybody hates gerrymandering. Everybody hates gerrymandering. I don't like it. I would love to see an independent commission to redraw the lines. And the fact that people hate gerrymandering, and then you realize, wow, they're doing mid-decade redistricting.
Mhm.
Like, this is not a thing. This is not only not a thing, it actually violates the Texas Constitution that says we do it once every 10 years. And so people are really like, wow, they just straight up need to cheat. And they need to cheat because of the policies right now that are kicking millions of people off their health care coverage, defunding public education, and the economy and our inflation for everyday Texans and Americans is going through the roof. And people are not satisfied with Republicans or Trump, which is why they're trying to change the lines.
Can you just really set the stakes for people on this call? What does it mean if these maps pass?
The fact that Trump was able to call Governor Abbott, and don't forget, in 2020, when Trump called Georgia and said, hey, boys, I need y'all to find me 12,000 votes to change the outcome of the election, to their credit, those Republicans said, no, sir, we're not doing that. That's a line too far. But when Trump called Governor Abbott and Texas Republicans and said, hey, boys, I need you to find me 5 new congressional seats, they said, does July work for you? And so I am proud as a Democrat that we stopped that play in July. We have brought national awareness, and it has responded in other Democrats stepping up and saying, look, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If red states want to now mid-decade redistrict to effectively take away the voice of voters, then we're going to actually go to our voters, which is what California is looking to do, and say, do you want to redo your districts to give you an opportunity to counter and negate what Texas is trying to do? So now you have other blue states stepping up in the way they can, which are one, they want to go to the voters, and two, they want to stay in compliance with the Voting Rights Act. What we know about these lines, first off, don't forget, Texas is already in a court case on our existing congressional lines because we are a minority majority state. Yet we have a heavy white Republican representation that does not and is not the individual that minority districts would elect of their choosing. We call it cracking and packing. They are taking districts that are probably already unconstitutional under the Voting Rights Act and making it drastically worse. And so we already have one series of maps in a court case out of El Paso before the federal courts. And then if this one passes, which we know that it will, they're going to pass it. When they pass it, this series of maps then goes into the court case because it is blatantly unconstitutional. They are again taking minority communities, taking away their ability to elect somebody of their choosing, and they are cracking and packing it into areas of which white Republican voters will be able to override the interest of the minority district. One of which is Texas 18, which is the seat of Barbara Jordan and Mickey Leland and Sheila Jackson Lee and all of them, the late Mayor Sylvester Turner, all African American icons from the state of Texas and Houston that represent a historic Black community. They are breaking up that district. They are taking away the history of civil rights in Texas. And so they're doing the same thing with Latin communities, Black communities, and we know that the lines that are being drawn are absolutely discriminatory and that the courts hopefully will do just what the Fifth Circuit did a couple days ago with the maps out of Louisiana and say that these violate the Voting Rights Act. And so it's really a two-pronged thing that's happening here. One is the national awareness of what Republicans are trying to do, cheating mid-decade. And the second is taking the unconstitutionality of the discriminatory impact and the effect that it violates the Voting Rights Act to the courts.
I know that there were things that led up to leaving the
Yes.
state, right? There were things that you were doing before, but can you walk us through like what prompted Texas Democrats to take that really extraordinary step of leaving the state to block the vote?
again, they were trying to cram this through without any attention. I mean, they started like for 2 weeks that we were here in special session. We had 2 hearings on flood mitigation, which we just lost 137 people, a significant amount, 8-year-old girls out of a cabin in the flood. And then
Mm-hmm.
they did hearings on the maps, but they had no maps. And so they
Mm-hmm.
actually did hearings in cities and communities about maps that didn't exist. And then, boom, they dropped them in the dead of night, probably drawn by some DC party boss. They put them on the floor in Austin, had one hearing for the public. 99% of the people that came to testify in all these hearings said, we don't want these maps. This is not a Texas thing. We're not asking for it. You're not generating it from us. Within 24 hours, they voted it out of committee, and within 24 hours of that, they had calendars putting it on the floor. And so, in rapid fire, they were trying to shove this steel
Mm-hmm.
down the throat of Texans. And so, our quorum break was to say, no way. We are going to make sure people know what you're doing. And that's what we have done successfully. I am proud that we've had delegations in New York, New Mexico, Illinois, California, and we really highlighted to the nation, hey, do you guys see what the Trump administration and what Republicans are trying to do in Texas? Because it's not going to stop in Texas. And so what we have done is brought as much awareness as possible to what they're doing in Texas. And part of that is to try to stop the domino. And the public awareness, I'll tell you, people do not like this. People get it. It is cheating, it is stealing, and it is taking away their vote. And so we are putting a political price on the Republicans trying to do it. And hopefully, again, it will make it painful enough that other states won't try to do it. Like when we were in Chicago, Indiana House members came to meet with us. And you know that JD Vance went to Indiana to try to encourage them to do it. And they came and met with us. The solidarity of the minority party in these states that are red to step up and say, we're going to do everything that we can to fight back within our limited power in our state, but we're going to ask for help from Democrats from around the nation. And that's why we really appreciate everything that we've gotten from blue states.
Can you obviously explain that this was a huge personal sacrifice for you and for all of your colleagues to do this? Just kind of lay out for people on this call, like what were the personal and professional sacrifices that you had to make to do this, to, to leave the state to stop this vote?
I mean, one, I signed up for this job. I love the job and I feel like a public servant at heart. I am your former chief human trafficking prosecutor. Many of us that are doing this job, we're not getting rich. We're not trying to get rich. We want to try to do the right thing. Quorum break is extraordinary. I mean, you are leaving and walking away from your family, your friends, what you have at home, and it is leaving the state under threat. The minute I got on the plane, I was threatened to lose my leadership position. We were threatened $500 a day fines, even though we only make $600 a month, and that's a personal fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the attorney general said he wanted us hunted down. I have had personal threats to my life and safety, and let me tell you, being your former chief human trafficking prosecutor, I've had criminals threaten my life. I never thought it would come from the governor of the state of Texas or the attorney general or the president. Having Cornyn try to get the FBI to surveil us and come get us in other states. And then even today, as we made quorum and we're back voluntarily, we were not allowed to leave. We were all assigned a police officer to stay with us. I am a lawyer and I am boiling at the fact that everything that they are doing right now has to be a red alarm that this is not normal. I am not your enemy. I am not any kind of combatant. I am your political opponent and I'm in the minority. I mean, these guys, they win because they're in the majority. The fact that they're trying to be this heavy handed and fake tough guy throwing around. I mean, look, you've pulled police officers off the beat dealing with actual crime because you want them to surveil your political opposition. That's not okay. And this is just what happened this afternoon. Go look. Nicole Collier is one of my colleagues still on the floor who has refused to participate and is making a big stink about that. So go please check out what Nicole Collier is doing right now in real time to try to combat what's happening here in Texas.
Yeah, thank you for that. Obviously, and just being away from your profession and your family and your friends and everything
Mm-hmm.
is just such a sacrifice to make. So we, again, thank you for all that you're doing to stand up for us and the whole country. I'm just curious now that you are back,
Yeah.
can you walk us a little bit through how that decision came to be? Like, how did you guys finally come together and be like, okay, we're heading back? And I was just curious what's going on in California with Governor Newsom
Yeah.
proposing that they would, potentially do some redistricting too, being triggered only if Texas or another state
Mhm.
did that first.
Correct. And there were two things that happened. One, this special session ended, which means you start over, and that was part of our goal. The second was Governor Newsom and California very strongly came out on Friday and said that they anticipate a redraw as a trigger to Texas, only if Texas does it and with the approval of the voters. And so that gives you, and it's temporary. Don't forget, they're not wanting to change the fact they have an independent commission. I support an independent commission. I've offered legislation for an independent commission. I would love it if voters were drawing lines and we run on fair ideas on policy and campaign finance reform. And so what California is offering to do is have their voters decide, make it temporary, and make it only reactionary and responsive to what Texas is trying to do to steal effectively 5 seats before this next election cycle. And so, in addition to that, you also have the Fifth Circuit that equally ruled and recognizing that Louisiana's maps are unconstitutional. And again, that's the next avenue. Just to be very blunt with people about Texas, Governor, what you're seeing the pressure that we're getting, you're seeing the financial ruin, you're seeing the threats to our personal safety, and now you're seeing the harassment from law enforcement. The only way that we could defeat this bill is if you kept 50 Democrats out of the state until next May. That's really not realistic. And so knowing that it's kind of like a filibuster. When somebody goes up and speaks for 25 hours, they don't turn around and start another filibuster the next morning. It is a tool that is really a stop on the clock. It is a stop on the clock to raise the awareness, which we have proudly done. And now our battle goes to the courts and through the floor vote, which is where we get to put down on the record the discriminatory impact of these maps, the way that they have disenfranchised minority communities, and then get that to the court. And so that's the next phase. And so this was always the battle for us. It was always on two fronts. And we have just taken the first front, and now we're headed to the second.
It's a huge sacrifice. And as a resident of Texas and someone who has been watching, I'm very, very appreciative. And, I don't think that I can say thank you enough. And I keep saying the thank yous in the chat. We are going to talk to you a little bit later in this conversation.
Right.
Now we are going to bring up a fellow Texan, Louise Joy, who is a Trouble Nation leader near Austin. Louise and her group have been fighting to protect democracy in our state and backing the efforts of Representative Johnson and her colleagues. There we are. I was going to say, is she here? Hi, Louise. Can you tell us a little bit about your Trouble Nation group, Blue Action Dems Southwest Austin?
So we started Blue Action Dem Southwest Austin. I was not part of the group that started it, but have gotten involved in it since 2021. But before that, got involved in our processes that Blue Action Dem Southwest Austin had in terms of doing block walking, getting out the vote, getting individuals registered to vote. We're really working to stay year round with people. And as things turned out, our monthly meeting was August 3rd. So Rep. Johnson knows that August 3rd was when they were leaving the state. And we had just gotten the maps. So we could barely tell what was going on with the maps. All we knew is they were just trying to get 5 seats, but didn't know what they were going to do. So here's our meeting. At this particular meeting, we decided to talk about redistricting, and Pooja Sethi, who had been Vicki Goodwin's chief of staff, she came and was talking to us about redistricting and was able to break the news to us after quorum broke that it had happened and that it wasn't going to get voted on in the next 2 days because they had broken quorum. The biggest thing that I think, as Rep. Johnson said, was the whole country needs to be aware and help us in Texas. I mean, our organizations need help to get out the vote. because the only way we can overcome what's going on with redistricting, and this goes on nationally, is we get more Democrats to the polls. We get them registered and we get them out to vote. And we help them get to the polls.
Let me ask you a little bit about what your group is doing, because I love the fact what Red, Wine, and Blue is all about, local organizing. We have, if you guys are out there interested in local organizing, go to our website and check out Trouble Nation. We will help you start a local group. But tell us a little bit about, I know that you found out quorum broke during your meeting and you're looking at maps. So what are your members doing? You mentioned sticky notes at the Capitol. Can you tell people what's going on with the sticky notes at the Capitol?
Groups throughout Austin, including people in our group, they would write notes that they went to the reps' offices and stuck them on their nameplates. Those would get taken down and more of them would go up, and they kept going back to put more there just so that they know that people cared about them, and also to let their staff know that they were supported and know that they were there still, staffing their office while the reps were out. And that's not an easy thing to do. With every action that they're doing is getting more people motivated and keeping them motivated and understanding what to do.
What's really nice about the Trouble Nation groups is that you are on the ground, you are seeing things, and just like you've explained, you're taking the actions, you're showing up, you're doing all of the things. Um, what are you hearing from your friends and neighbors? How are people feeling? How are Texans specifically feeling about this attempt to redraw districts? What are you feeling on
Oh,
the ground?
pure anger. I mean, and it's not just us that are losing our vote. The
Hmm.
entire country is affected when you add these 5 extra Republicans in Texas
Yeah.
against what's the majority in Congress. And so, we hate that it could happen here, but affect everybody.
We appreciate the work that you're doing in your Trouble Nation group and all of the things that you're doing to make sure you're fighting back and making sure your voice is heard and supporting the work that Rep. Johnson and all of the Dems are doing to fight back against this, unfair redistricting that's happening in Texas. So thank you so much for your time and the work that you're doing.
And we'd like anybody in Texas in our area, come join us. Blue Action Dem Southwest Austin, please.
Welcome back. You got to hear someone on the ground fighting
Yeah, I
back.
love it. And hey, thank you for the sticky notes. It was something that got sent within our group every day on that. We really do appreciate it. Every
love that.
encouragement that everybody has sent was very helpful.
Okay, so I want to get your reaction. We have heard a lot of politicians, political pundits, people saying that what you're doing is a political stunt or you're abandoning your job. And I love how you threw some shade. I'm going to make sure I get this right. You threw some shade to Ted Cruz when you said abandoning your job is going to Cancun in the middle of a freeze. So what are you doing? I'm sorry, what you're doing is fundamentally protecting the Constitution, our rights, everyone's rights. So how are you handling the trolls, whether it's the news pundits or people on social media or whoever it may be who's coming after you for this?
I think the biggest thing has been the threats. We legitimately have had serious threats. And I will tell you, I was part of the group that broke quorum in 2021, and the venom and vitriol is very different. And so I think we are at a new place in politics where we had to call out Governor Abbott because the other day he said that he had a belt full of bullets ready for Texas Democrats who hadn't yet come back. And so I called him out and said, look, I'm not your enemy. I'm just your political opposition. And we don't need this kind of rhetoric, especially with where we are, with what's happened to Democratic members in Minnesota and other places. And so I think we absolutely need to tone down the extremist rhetoric that we're seeing truly from Republicans towards Democrats. We are just the minority voice, but we're doing everything that we can to uphold it. I know folks are frustrated, and I know folks are frustrated that the idea that Democrats made quorum or that a couple people were in a position to make quorum. And I do hope people will understand a quorum break is always temporary. It's always temporary. It was always temporary in 2003. It was always temporary in 2021. It is not something that you can sustain for 15 months, which is what would happen because the governor can call you back. it is like that filibuster that it's 25 hours. And, when that person falls out, we still cheer and reward and appreciate, and we don't get mad that they couldn't stay up for 27. And so I know folks are frustrated because they wanted many of us to be able to take this someplace that we couldn't. But please know, as Democrats, we are in this together. The fight is not with the other Democrats on the floor. The fight is with the Republicans. We would not be in this position but for Republicans. And please understand, I promise you, my colleagues, many of them have given everything that they can, but there is a point where they can't do it any further. But the fact that we were able to do what we were is absolutely a win. The fact that we were able to inspire the nation to step up is absolutely a win. And the fact that you're going to see, hopefully, all of us trying to remind everybody that the Democrats are unified and the Republicans are where we need to be frustrated. That's really the message that has to get out of this, is the Republicans are doing this. The Republicans are the one that are, again, bringing it on the floor again, and they're going to do it. They're in the majority. They're going to pass it. But that's why the next phase of our win here is to get this record to the courts and give the courts the opportunity to do the right thing. And we see the courts do that. But that's why we have to play this way. And it is our best path to protecting the voters that we care about.
Um, and you've talked a little bit throughout our conversation about why people outside of Texas should care about what's happening right now. In your view, like what reforms, such as independent redistricting commissions, are needed to restore public trust and prevent similar partisan overreach in the
Yeah,
future?
so speaking of trolls, I've done a lot of media over the last couple of weeks, and I've been on some stations where they'll say, well, it's both sides. No, it's actually not both sides. Like, I'm a Democrat. I keep offering an independent commission to redraw the lines. When Democrats had the Congress, they offered H.R. 1, which had an independent commission to redraw the lines nationwide. Every Democrat voted for it, every Republican voted against it. And so we're in a special session dealing with redistricting. I'm going to, again, offer my legislation for an independent commission to redraw the lines. If the governor is interested in that, let's pass it and let's put it out there. Or how about even just asking the voters if they want to do this? What about making this an HJR, making it a question for the voters and see if voters really want it? And so I need people to spare me the both sides. This is not a both sides thing. This is Republicans. And don't forget, about 9 to 15 states already have an independent commission. That's like California. Those are predominantly Democratic states. And when they start their redistricting, they start it by drawing lines to be fair to the voters to choose who they want. When red states redistrict every 10 years, they draw it heavily to favor their own interests and disenfranchise minority voters. And so you already have red states trying to do this gain against minority populations, while blue states give everybody the opportunity to choose the individual of their liking. And so, again, it's inherently unfair that you have this unilateral disarmament. Blue states are saying, we'll let the voters decide, and red states are saying, no, we decide and let the voters get who we picked for them. And so it's inherently unbalanced from the beginning. And I would love to see an independent commission to redraw the lines, and I would love campaign finance reform. So I'm a Texas Democrat. I'm a Texas elected official. You could write me a check for $50 million. There are no campaign limits in Texas. And I say that obnoxious number, but don't forget, Dan Patrick, who was lieutenant governor of the Senate, took $3 million from a guy named Tim Dunn, who was Ken Paxton's biggest donor, before Dan Patrick presided over the impeachment trial of Ken Paxton, of which he got a political acquittal. And I'll say political acquittal because Ken Paxton admitted to the elements of the offense before the impeachment and admitted to it again after the impeachment. He got a political acquittal. Well, Governor Greg Abbott was so burned up by the fact that Dan Patrick had gotten the biggest campaign donation in Texas history of $3 million. He turned around and went and got $6 million from a guy named Jess Yass out of Pennsylvania, who some of you know, that wanted vouchers. That number went from 6 million to 12 million, allowed Governor Abbott to go primary. Rural Republicans had stood up against vouchers for public education, eliminated those rural Republicans on a lie, and then got himself a new house that, guess what they gave him this session? Vouchers. Not only did they give him vouchers, They gave them vouchers on the day that Trump called our Republicans who wanted to stand up against it and basically said, if you don't give me vouchers and give Greg Abbott vouchers, I'll primary you. And so Texas is kind of the highlight of people who are more concerned with keeping their job than doing their job. It
Mhm.
proves to you that it's not about public service. And so Texas has gone far. And I do say it as a caution to the rest of the nation. When these folks are more beholden to doing the will of winning their next primary election and not the will of the general population, we're in some real trouble.
Absolutely. It sounds sounds like a very similar model to what we see at the federal level of you're going to be primaried and the
Yep.
people are more fearful of that. So LaFonda kind of touched on this in the question before. I just want to repeat it. So what do you want people outside of Texas who care about what's happening? What do you want them to know right now about your state or about how this might impact them, even if they don't live they're not a Texan?
I appreciate the nation is woken up and is paying attention to what's happening in Texas because, I mean, like when we broke quorum in 2021, we were basically warning the nation of what we now know is Project 2025. I mean,
Mhm.
they had a provision to try to overturn the results of the election with a single judge. I mean, they've eliminated women's access to reproductive rights. They are the most extreme version that whatever happens in Texas is spreading to the nation. And that's part of the reason why you saw Democrats, even though we know we're in the minority, even though that we know that at some point we are going to lose because we are in the minority, that we were willing to step up and try to square up and say, no, not this time. Because we need folks, if I can do it as a Democrat in Texas that is getting all of the punishment and retribution that's coming my way, then we need other Democrats in other states that have a fighting chance to step up as hard and as big as we are. And so that's what we want. We want to inspire Democrats across the nation to get that everybody's fight has to look a little bit different and do what you can and step up. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be in the minority. I would love it if we were in the majority. And so all of this again comes to November 2026. It all comes down to the next election. Texas is not a red state. Texas is a non-voting state. If you
Mhm.
look at folks, there are more Democrats than Republicans. Texas is a vote oppressed and vote suppressed state that it's this very thing where Republicans gerrymander districts to determine the outcome before you get there that people say, why bother? Why show up to vote? And that's what keeps people from going to the ballot box. And that's why we want to inspire folks, man, step up, do something extraordinary, and just find a way to get your vote cast.
What is it that you want ordinary citizens, whether Texas or outside of Texas, to be doing right now? And I actually want to touch on, is there anything you want them to be doing about these attacks that you know are coming for you all, whether it's the fines or threats of arrest or removing you from leadership? Like, is there anything specifically that you think people could do to help?
Please see and recognize what we have done in Texas. It is a win. It is a win, and it is something that can build to a bigger win. And so stay unified in recognizing that the Democrats that have shown fight, and we've shown a lot of fight, we are stronger together. And so stay together. Part of the reason I think folks are really chopping up on us is they want to deflate the enthusiasm. They want people to go, oh man, they didn't win. Well, it depends on what winning looks like. And I think we are winning. We can't stop this vote because they have the majority and can call us back 15 months in a row. But this is a win. And so take this win, move it forward, keep united. And I know that you guys are you have a new app, you have new engagement for your group. Stay connected with groups like this, stay unified in a community where you can get access to better information to find out what's happening. And I'm grateful y'all would invite me on.
Well, we're thrilled to
I love
have you
that.
here. So, especially like I said, it was a long day for you. It's been a long 2 weeks, so
Mhm.
we're grateful for you joining us. But
It's
LaFonda,
been a crazy day. Again, pay attention to Nicole Collier. She's sitting on the floor. Again, everything that's happening in Texas, it really is. It's happening in real time and it is changing like you wouldn't believe on a minute's notice.
I want people to do all of the things that Representative Ann Johnson asked you to do. I want you to stay engaged. I want you to not get overwhelmed by the chaos because that is what they want to happen. They want to divide Dems by keeping you overwhelmed, keeping you feeling like the chaos is too much, and there's just nothing you can do about it. But I want you to do what we asked you at the beginning of the call and make some noise. We need to be speaking out. We need to be talking to your family and friends. We know Red, Wine, and Blue members are doing this across the country because you absolutely care about democracy and you are not going to just let this happen without a fight. We've talked to Trouble Nation members, we've talked to Louise about what they're doing on the ground to fight, and we know that you're on the ground fighting as well. So at Red, Wine, and Blue, we want to support you in whatever efforts you are doing to engage, to stand up for democracy, for voting, and for your rights.
Please, you can get on the App Store and just look for Red, Wine, and Blue. You can see what it looks like there on the phone, or you can scan these QR codes to get right into the App Store and download the app. So this is our best way to keep you guys up to date, instantaneously. We are going to have messaging in there. So we give you messaging on important topics like what's going on in Texas, how to talk to your friends, how to have these conversations. All of our events are posted in there. You also can talk with people in the community if you don't want to be on the meta platforms anymore and you want to have conversations with people who share your values. We have all kinds of community conversations going on in here. But most important, this is where we can find rapid response. We can send you things that we need you to be doing. And it's just a really great way to be connected and informed. So hopefully you get on that app. Also, click on that rally tile on that app, and what's called Rally Together, and that is our favorite way to help you talk to your friends and family about what is going on, about things like this redistricting in Texas, about elections, about candidates. We can help you make sure that they do turn out to vote. So get on there, play around, check out all the things, all the really cool resources on there to help you out. Just want to thank you for your time. Is there any final thoughts, anything you want to say to everybody here tonight that you haven't already covered?
No, thank you. And if you want to, my team reminds me, follow us too. We're Vote Ann Johnson. We're a Texas rep. Please pay attention to what we're doing. We'll try to keep you guys informed what's going on in our state. We didn't know we'd be the ones that have to be the last line of defense and democracy of the United States, but unfortunately, this is where we all are right now. So we all got to get to the front lines immediately. So thank y'all so much.
For everything that you're doing for us. We
Thank
really
y'all.
appreciate it. Thank you. I've been watching it every day and it's a lot. I know that it's a personal sacrifice. I know that there's been a lot that is coming your way. And I know that it definitely impacts what's happening across the country. What's happening in Texas is going to impact everywhere else. And so I appreciate you just taking the first steps to protect not just Texans, but the rest of the country.
Thank y'all.